There are a number of connector types that you need to be familiar with visually on the A+ exam, and there are 8 of these. You just need to recognize them by looking at them. And now you also need to know a little bit about each one, but we'll get into that in other places in the course here. But let me warn you, any of these 8 connectors that I mentioned, if you've never worked with them, if you're not very familiar with them, you need to go out and do a little more reading, okay? It's not possible for me to cover every aspect of the 27 billion possible questions they could ask you. Familiarity and experience helps more than anything. Most of these connectors you're going to know and you've already been working with, okay? So here we go. Serial and parallel connectors. If you look on the back of most PCs, especially older ones, you will see these parallel connectors, and they're usually like 25 pins. And this is what a parallel looks like. It's wide. This is on the machine. It's female. This is the serial connector on the machine. It's male. It's usually 9 pin. And this just has to do with how the data is carried over the wires. We won't go into that. Just make sure that you can recognize these. The wide one's usually parallel. The more narrow one is serial. But it's the same general type pin layout. And it has to do with the number of pins and how the data is transferred. Okay. Then a VGA connection. This is a general monitor connection. This was the standard for years. It is now basically being replaced by DVI and HDMI and some other things. But notice this is what that looks like. And of course, the connector coming off a display unit that goes in is going to be the male version of this with pins. And so that's a VGA connector. Make sure you can recognize that by sight. An HDMI connector, notice this is its standard. This is both ends of one cable. And notice it's wide, kind of like a USB, but it has this little curved indenture on both sides. And of course, the receiving port just looks like the opposite of this. But that's an HDMI cable. It's becoming very popular for transferring audio and video around. Then a DVI cable, and I like this graphic here because you can see here's the VGA. This was the standard video connection for quite a while. And then DVI, digital video interface, this is what it looks like. Notice you've got this cluster of very neatly stacked holes here and pins on the male side. Then you've got these 4. This can be a little different sometimes, can be just one. But anyway, that's a DVI, okay? And then this is the old S-video. That's a good comparison of what they each look like. Audio connections generally on a PC on the outside are going to be the 3.5 millimeter stereo jack, and then you'll have the little 3.5 millimeter holes that you can plug that into. And of course the headphone is out. This is how to send data in or out, and then the microphone's going to go in. So just that's audio, 3.5 millimeter. Stereo jack, and then the same size hole for the port. And then the one, watch for this one on the exam. They love to ask you this question. RJ45 is the big one. Just remember, 45 is bigger than 11. This is your network cable. RJ11, the same type connector, it's just smaller, but this is the standard connector for telephones. And so this is what we use to connect telephones to the telephone jacks and so forth. So RJ45 is your network connector. RJ11 is smaller than 45, right? And it is used for telephones. Make sure you can recognize those 8 connectors by sight, by port configuration, by what the port looks like, and you'll be able to breeze through those sections of the exam as well.